So let's chat through this lag putting. Now, a couple things are going to be stroke related. The rest of it is all routine. Now, from a stroke standpoint, what we have to ensure is that we don't have this style of putting stroke, short, long. Okay, that right there is going to be the absolute killer if it comes to distance control. Because if I'm doing something like that, all of my speed is being generated by the force that I'm bringing in going through. Impossible to predict. What I want to have is a stroke that looks a lot more like this. So this is going to be a stroke where the backswing length and the through swing length are close to matching. If I have a motion like that, it's a lot easier to predict the speed that the club has at contact, because I'm essentially building it up in the backswing and then letting it accelerate on its own going through. As soon as we start having to force it going this way, that's when the random putts start to show up. Okay, if I give it a little bit too much gas, I nuke it by 10 feet. If I don't get it quite right, maybe I'm 8 feet short. Okay, so if I get used to keeping that consistent, where it's just a matter of the pullback or the backswing, that's what we're really focusing on in terms of speed, that's going to be much easier. So what we want to look for is a similar length backswing to through swing. The next thing that we want is to ensure that our stroke has good rhythm. Okay, obviously rhythm's important in every aspect of the game, but the cadence to a putting stroke is really important in pace control. Now, what you can do to train this is just on your phone, bring up the metronome app and put it at 70. Okay, anywhere from 66 to 70 is usually good for most players. I put it at 70, I find that works really well. And at 70, what you're going to get used to doing is matching up the start of the stroke, so when the putter first moves, and impact with the beeps. So it's beep, beep, and you're matching up the start with impact with those beeps. Now, if you go on the green, let's just say that you spend 15 minutes putting various distances, just kind of randomizing as much as you can, where every single putt, you get used to matching up the start with impact on the beeps. What you'll start to find naturally is that you'll get a really good feel of the rhythm that's needed. Now, what's interesting is when you have to vary distances, especially if they're quite dramatic, if you go and hit a 10-footer and then you go and hit a 50-footer, and in both cases you're having to match up the same beeps, that's what often gets people to really start thinking differently about their distance control. Because what we need, when we have putts that are going to be 30, 40, 50, 60 feet, we need to get the putter moving a lot quicker off the ball. So if I've got a putt that's going to be 60 feet and I know I need to get my putter back somewhere all the way over here and then back to the golf ball in the same timing, I've got to get that putter head moving. So I'm going to be there to have enough speed and actually get it back in time. Now, if I've only got, let's just say it's a 5-footer, I'm not going to have that big of a putting stroke. The putter's only going to travel, whatever it is, like 6, 8 inches. So because the putter swing is going to be shorter, my putter is actually not traveling as fast. Okay, so I'm still looking for the same match up on those metronome beeps on a 5-footer as I'd be looking for on a 50-footer. And that's, when you start to experiment with that, you're gonna know what I mean, that it's a totally different way of looking at judging your tempo or your rhythm. So judging the rhythm on this like 5-footer is going to be beep, 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 beep. So you see my putter is actually traveling a lot slower versus if I'm trying to go beep, 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 I'm having to get the putter moving a lot quicker when I'm making a bigger putting stroke. Okay, and that'll make a lot of sense if you actually, again, have the metronome at 70, have it in your pocket, just have it making those beeps, go hit putts of short distances, long distances, randomize it, and you'll very quickly understand that in order for you to be able to match up start of the putter swing and impact, you have to get the putter moving quicker as the putts get longer. So that's really the stroke stuff that's important. the rest of it comes down to process and routine. Now, one of the big things here in order to be successful with distance putting is, in a sense, we have to give up some of our obsession over hitting the perfect line. Doesn't mean that we're putting to empty space, but we're not going to be as picky with the line that the golf ball is going to roll on. Okay, we are truly needing to become obsessed with the distance that the ball is going to roll. Okay, now if I have a putt that's going to be from over here, I am obsessed with what part of the cup I'm starting my ball on. So whether it's like right edge, inside right, you know, a hair outside left, like I'm obsessed with that. I'm less focused from 4 feet away with the pace of the putt, because like that's an easier task, judging pace from 4 feet. Okay, getting the perfect line, that takes a little bit more skill. That's what I really want to be able to obsess over. Now, as the putt gets further and further away, I don't mind if my ball is off in direction. I don't mind if I'm a foot right or a foot left if I'm 40 feet away. I could care less. Because what I want is I want my pace to be somewhere inside of 2 feet short, 2 feet long. Okay, if I can achieve that, if I had, let's say, a line right there and then a line over here, if I was able to get my ball inside of a rectangle that was, let's call it like a foot right, even if it's 2 feet right, 2 feet left, 2 feet short, 2 feet long, call it like a 2x2 box. If I was able to do that, I'm going to almost guarantee 2 putts, which when we're putting from anywhere outside of 20 feet, 15 feet for that matter, a 2 putt is great. That's what we're looking for. Now, to guarantee the 2 putt, we've got to make sure that we've really got to be inside of 3 feet. Okay, as soon as we get outside of 3 feet, the skill required to make that next putt, now we're looking at percentages. Okay, if we're inside of 3 feet, we're kind of looking at almost a guarantee. So we need to be able to have the goal of getting inside of 2 feet for sure. Now, to achieve that, the mindset has to go from being a dart player, okay, who's like really focused in on the perfect line, and we have to become, if you've ever tried like curling, okay, or like any sport that's very much like distance control becomes the priority. Okay, that's what we've got to really lock in, is how far something's traveling rather than like the perfect line. So what I'm looking to do here is I want to make sure that as much of the act of putting as possible is done by my subconscious. I don't want to be consciously manipulating or generating this movement. I want to be in as much of a flow state as possible. Now, when it comes to your routine, we need your routine to be 100% dialed. There can't be any parts of your routine where you're overly conscious of setup, of movement, of grip, of where I'm getting the motion from. None of that. Like we have to be free. We have to be in flow. Now, you probably will find that your accuracy is better when you have practice swings on these longer putts. Okay? I'm personally not a huge practice swing person, but I still coach people to use practice swings, especially when the putts are longer, because it helps them to get into the flow state. You know, what we talk about with any athlete when they're just in this automatic mode. Now, what you can imagine is that, let's just say that I've got a 40-footer right here, and I'm beside my ball, ready to make my practice swings. I'd be making those practice swings while looking at the target. So looking at it and then making what I think would be an appropriate length motion for that distance. Now, what I'm looking to then do is when I go into my setup with that golf ball, okay, club first, feet second, grip third, look to target fourth, look back to ball. I want to make a motion that feels like it is exactly the same length as the motion that I was making in my practice swing. And that's the flow state, is that I've just made some practice swings. So let's just say I've made these practice swings to that 40-footer where it's, okay, I'm looking at it, back, through, okay? I'm not being conscious of how far that's going back. I'm just going to what feels good. And then when I step forward to this ball, I'm going to go through my look, and then I'm going to go back to where I just was. Like I already have that benchmark because I was making the practice swing to a particular part. I'm not going to be conscious of the pullback or that backswing. Just going to where it just was, okay, where it's most familiar. So your brain will have this sense of like recency. There's this recent memory of what you were just doing in your practice swing. Just let it find that spot. And then we learn from the result. So if you go and execute a putt that felt super free, that's the goal, is I want you to hit putts where you're like, woof, I wasn't manipulating that, I was very free with that. Then we learn from what happens. Okay, if you do that and it goes 10 feet long, ask yourself, did I give that a bit of extra? Like, did I give that a bit of speed? In which case, you got to make sure that you can get away from that. Okay. If you felt, no, I felt completely free with that motion, I didn't give it any additional speed. If the ball goes too far, we learn from it. We just shorten our feel a little bit. If the ball goes too short, we learn from that. We pull it back a little bit further. Okay. We have to learn from what's just happened. And from that feedback, there's always going to be like the Goldilocks approach where it's like, okay, too hot, too cold, just right. That's how we start to calibrate these things. But what we have to get to is a state where when you've got longer putts, and I want you to understand that you are going to have, for first putts on the golf course, most of them are going to be between 20 and 40 feet. Okay, first putts. Okay, unless you've missed a green, which obviously is not optimal. If you've missed a green and chipped on, heck, we hope you're inside of 20. But if it's a first putt for birdie, most of the time it's going to be between 20 and 40 feet. So you better have a good sense of judging pace, because anything outside of 15 is three puttable. Okay, especially when we're working with tiers and faster greens. We can absolutely bring in three putts as we start to work outside of 15 feet. So we need to make sure that we have the pace dialed so that you're consistently getting that golf ball to die near the hole. Now, I would always go with the objective, especially when we're outside of that zone of, let's say, that 15-foot kind of magic circle. Beyond that, your objective is always to get it inside of something like, okay, this is going to be probably like a 1-foot circle from the center of the hole. You can expand that a little bit as we're talking about a 20, 30, 40 footer, but that's what you're really focused on, is like getting it inside of that zone. So that's where, from a mindset standpoint, if you can pull back some of the obsession for pinpoint precision on direction, and you can focus more in on, I've got to get that pace. I've got to get it into that zone. That is my goal. Whether it's on the left side or the right side is less important. I've just got to get it into that zone, period. Now, last thing I would say that's going to help you to have more of this flow state is that your routine truly needs to be dialed. There cannot be anything in your routine that's overly conscious. So if in your routine, and I can start to tell that people are in their head, they're getting conscious a lot when their routine changes. So like my personal routine is going to be putter behind ball, feet, completing grip, looking to target, looking back to ball, and then going as soon as I get back to the golf ball. Like that's going to be the routine where if I go ahead and hit 20 putts, and I video all of them, it's going to be difficult to see differences in the routine. That's the objective. Okay, the more that we see, okay, it looks like you stood over the golf ball for another 2 or 3 seconds. Okay, that one you took another look. Okay, that one you stepped in with your left foot or you walked in with your left hand on the putter. When the routine changes, generally speaking, there's a change of mindset. There's a distraction. And we want to, again, flow state is the goal. To get into flow state, we need to be doing the same thing every single time. Okay, so again, a few things here. Stroke-wise, let's make sure that we've got equidistance, okay, cadence around that 70 on the metronome, and then dial in your routine. Make sure that you're not contributing to the stroke consciously. Big one. Okay, you're truly looking at it, Okay, looking back and then just letting things go. Okay, you're not trying to micromanage the putting stroke. All right? Let me know if this stuff makes sense. Any questions at all, I'll clear it up for you.